Hello, hello, and welcome back to Day 9 Daily number 346. Thank God, I actually have it written on this other monitor. Hooray! And we're talking about DDE versus White Raw. We did a fairly in-depth analysis of the early game to point out, thus far, and it's important that we review because I love review, unusual opening from DDE, unusual opening from White Raw. It is incorrect to say something like, oh yeah, he just went 2 barracks, expand into 4 barracks. Instead, what we did is we pointed out how the aggression should be working, both in terms of execution, bringing these SCVs, in terms of logic, we're trying to kill off sentries early on, and we have concussive, and he doesn't have warp gate yet. So we talked about why that rush worked. We're also talking a lot about why these 2 barracks make quite a bit of sense at this point in time. For instance, if our opponent was, I don't know, say, going for a really fast Colossus, would we want to do these? What I'm pointing out to you is that these 2 barracks that we're looking at right now are a choice in gameplay that, based upon intuition, it's a good choice for DDE to be doing this. It makes intuitive sense. It's very easy to blindly follow builds and then just be good in 90% of situations, lose in the other 10% and be like, maybe the build's bad. No. You just make sure that in those 9 out of 10 times where you're winning, you keep doing it. And in that 1 out of 10 times where you lose, you don't keep doing it. Now let's go ahead and hop into the late game and just wrap this sucker up and hop right on into pot number 2. We have Meaty Owl Legs, aka DDE, doing, I would say, a pretty reasonable defense at this point in time. Does not really have enough guys mining minerals, but a little bit of an advantage of going for this 2 Tech Lab build. Oh, by the way, one advantage of going for this 2 Tech Lab build is that you can get the combat shield and the stim pretty damn fast. We're going to have both by, like, ignore this timer because, in a sense, this timer can be deceptive because this isn't a normal 10-minute and 22-second game. This is kind of like 10 minutes and 22 seconds after a lot of aggression. I mean, hell, Protoss has only just gotten this expansion up. So this is still a very fast-feeling set of upgrades. Another justification for why it's okay to get those barracks up. So now, great, we have our good buddy DDE who's ready to begin stepping into the late game. He's continuing to make Marines and Marauders. More than happy to make some Marines out of these Tech Lab barracks. That is all fine and well and dandy. And we saw a lot of gateway units out of our opponent White Raw, so it's pretty reasonable to conclude that, again, he's not going to be getting some sort of huge robo-tech up really, really fast. He's not rushing for any sort of nutty tech. And let's talk about something we're not seeing. We're not seeing Protoss be really passive at the start. We're not seeing that. What if DDE had seen really passive Protoss? What if he'd seen Protoss push down, take this expansion, and never make an attempt at DDE's life ever? What then? Well, hell, I would say that DDE could very, very comfortably just push with his 4 barracks, early on, deal a lot of poking and prodding pressure for a win. Alright, cool. Cool! This is good news. So at this point in time, we are seeing DDE do the basic standard stuff. I want to get medevacs, because you know what? Medevacs are good. I don't care if they're for drop or for healing. They have so many freaking uses that, you know, you just get them, and there's nothing actually really that incredibly wrong with them. But I want to point out a little bit about how this timing lines up nicely. Remember this engineering bay that we got before anything else? Well, hey, our +1 actually finished not long ago. It actually finished about 20 seconds ago. So now DDE is ready to rock and roll, ready to go with the big push. And again, I pose to you the following. Why would DDE not go for this big drop? Why would he not go for a counterattack drop? What about that? Why is that? Well, there's actually 2 reasons in my mind. One is, everything we've been doing has been focused on having a really big ground army. We have been getting our stim early. We got our combat shield early. We got a +1 upgrade early. We got 4 barracks early. Everything indicates that we're focused on a big army. And what do you know? There's a big freaking army right there. So if you went for a drop, you have a small army in the medevacs And the rest of your army, you have a small army sitting around incapable of really doing anything. It's inconsistent. If you're going for a big army, then just attack like a man, like a straight-up big army man should. Or hell, if you get a big army, then load up 4 medevacs worth of stuff and do some jank with it. I want you to think about all the builds where you see these drops come in, where you see really fast double drop play. Or actually, I should say, think of all the games where you see double drop play at all early game. It actually happens really fast because you'll see those players having a tiny army. So if you have a tiny army really quickly with this drop, then yeah, you can do a lot of things with it because your opponent should also have a tiny army. The second reason is really basic. We've seen our opponent be building a shit ton of units, so we expect him to have a shit ton of units on 2 bases. So it's just kind of hard to push in there and do some damage. So now we've seen Storm. We have a good sense of our opponent's tech paths. We know what's up. We're still doing a little bit of healing. There's the armory going down, a Ghost Academy. This is all like intuitive stuff. A third base going down. The third base timing, I feel like a lot of people just accept this as the norm. If you're going as really fast drops, I actually think you can get this command center up much earlier. But with this one, yeah, you're just producing, and it's fine to go ahead and just roll with it and build it when you can. The armory a little early. This feels a little bit mistake-like because we don't have any second engineering bay, unless I missed it. I'm actually looking around for it. And the Ghost Academy makes complete and total intuitive sense. But I want to, again, pose the following question to all y'all. When are we getting add-ons, and what add-ons are we getting? Are we getting 2 more tech labs? Are we getting 1 tech lab and 2 reactors? What is going to be that distribution? And I think that the answer pretty clearly is 2 reactors and a tech lab. We really need the gas for the Ghosts and for the Starport. And Marines are going to be quite good against this composition. I know that might sound counterintuitive, but that's actually true in practice. They're a lot better than the Marauders are. Especially cost for cost. So DDE is doing these hit-and-run tactics, and too often people will, again, view this in kind of a similar vein to your more traditional TvP. And by traditional TvP, I mean someone like Select. If you've never seen Select play, let me describe some tactics. He gets 2 medevacs really, really quickly, and he drops them in the back of your main. And while he's dropping there, and doing all the ninja moves there, he has like 4 Marauders run up and take down your expansion. He's like a ninja hitting you at 10 places at once. Good. A lot of people will look at DDE's play here and say, oh yeah, great, it's just good in general to be ninja-like and to take down nexuses. But this is a little bit different because, again, note, his opening was consistent with the big army play. This push that he's doing is consistent with big army play. He's keeping it all in a clump. So even though he's doing this ninja tactic, he's not doing it with a whole bunch of crazy drop antics in 10 places at once. I do want to briefly rewind and point out what the heck's happening over here. It's amazing and wonderful Marine suicide missions. Yeah, sure, he's sending 2 guys in there, but notice how they don't really do that much. That's all that went on, for any of you wondering about all the corpses littering the front yard. So we are seeing, again, DDE. He's avoiding the army, but he's avoiding it in a solid army way, which I think is actually the correct thing to do. And I think DDE is one of the best players of actually actively doing this, of sending his whole army out, but still not being one to engage. He's comfortable doing all these sorts of shenaniganry, but he's going to get force fielded in half. There it is. But no big deal, he's just going to exploit this high ground. And in the meantime, we do see 4 tech labs down right now. I think that this is a gigantic mistake. And we're actually seeing it represented in DDE's resource distribution. He doesn't have enough gas to support both upgrades out of 2 engineering bays. I mean, there even is no second engineering bay, but, you know, hell, even with 1, just look at the freaking resources, right? He can only build, like, a ghost right now. In the unit station, we have 1 ghost out right now. Get more reactors early on. Get, like, 2 barracks with reactors, 3 with tech lab when you're up against this sort of force. And how you get there, you know, will depend on the situation, whether you want your barracks first, whether you want your Ghost Academy first, or your upgrades first. But this I kind of like did not quite like as much. And of course, doing little teensy drops, looking good. But again, being big army in his ninja-ness style, and his decision making here is quite good, right? Notice By the way, notice that he pulled all his forces down this way and up here. He didn't pull all his forces back this way initially. He's keeping his stuff aggressively positioned, and that's actually a really good thing to do. That makes this expansion super safe. This retreat right now, this is kind of abandoning any attempts to do any more future aggression. And it sort of opens up possibilities for White Raw to begin being a little more aggro himself. Fourth guy going down, that's all good. DDE has this weird trend where he never gets add-ons to his barracks, like, ever. Sure, he'll get some tech labs if he needs be, but he just, like, does not build reactors. And I actually don't like that so much. I think it's okay to have some barracks at some points in time with, like, no reactors, but you should get some reactors. Oh, also, that's part of the problem with his resources. He's just not gathering any. Ah, excellent. So, what have we seen harass-wise so far from DDE? Not much. He did a drop here, but for the most part, he had this huge giganto army cluster going on, because that's how his opening sort of set himself up. At this point, now finally, I think it's okay for DDE to begin doing a couple more drops here, a couple more drops here, because he has enough macro to sustain this production. He has enough to have like a good army that can do stuff and can defend and be strong, while having stuff drop and be kind of a scary threat. But the end of this game is actually not so dramatic. It's a pretty straightforward finish. What I do want to note, though, is many people are probably thinking to themselves, yeah, see, look at that, no reactors, what the hell? Some people are probably asking themselves, well, what about, yeah, there it is, the Colossus. Sometimes you'll be going Marine Marauder Ghost, and you will not have any Vikings, and he'll just have the Colossus just plop right on out. DDE has been so active at engaging, it has kind of forced a lot of Zealots and Archons out of White Raw. And you can use some loose estimations to see how much gas he's dumping into these Archons, but in particular, if he's expanding a lot, in general, when you're expanding a lot, you don't have the resources to both defend the expansions and get the a whole bunch of Colossi up at the same time. If White Raw was chilling here and chilling here and chilling here and just had these three, I would start to be a little more scan heavy as Terran. I'd really start to check stuff out. But the fact that White Raw has taken this and that DDE has killed off an expansion attempt here up in center, I think it's fairly safe for him to do this. And this push is basically insurance against that. It's basically like saying, okay, you took this expansion, so you can't have really fast Colossi. So I'm going to push right now, and if you are getting Colossi, you're only just now going to have them. Because the last thing you want to do is be in DDE's spot and say, great, I don't need Vikings for a little while now. And then you let him get the Colossi anyways, because you wait way too long. So we see some EMPs go down. There are so many units for DDE, but unfortunately, the storms can be a little bit more potent. I think there's some missed target firing going on here by DDE, but fortunately, he just has so much stuff that it didn't really matter so much. And look at all that healing! But even then, I really like the way that we saw DDE play it. He had aggression in the early game. Then he followed that up with some aggression in the, he followed that up with some aggression later on, but it was like big army aggression. He got all these barracks up, and as an option, he could have done a naked 4 barracks push, and then he saw, oh my god, actually, hell, I'll just bring the timer back. Yeah, let's review how awesome DDE is, alright? So he does this push. A little while later, he gets a bunch of barracks up, because he sees that his opponent can't really deal with a bunch of barracks units super easily. This gives him the opportunity to do a push later on, just a naked push, but he elects not to do that. Instead, he sees a whole bunch of gateway units and decides, alright, cool, I'm going to get some medevacs up. He gets those medevacs up, and what does he do? He does a straight big army push with them. This is great, just doing a straight big army push. He doesn't force himself to fight, but notice his army all the way down at the far south end of the map, protecting this expansion by peeling all the Protoss units away. And then he uses this as sort of like a platform for his aggression. And then only near the end of the game, after all his shenaniganry has sort of wrapped up and come to a halt, does he just gather up a big damn force and go kill his opponent. And this can be one of the most baffling moments for many Protosses, when, like, the whole big army just runs right on in, and you die. And you're like, but I had Colossi, and Archons, and Speed Zealots, and I stormed you. And it's like, well, yeah, but DDE did such a good job just denying you any money at all points in the game that when he did this final push, this was just like the formality. This was just like what allowed him. This is just what allowed him to win at the very, very end. This was like it's kind of like the guy who you've been, you know, shooting with a gun for 10 hours, and then you walk up and you shove him over. The gun is what killed him, not the final shove. You can withstand a lot of bullets. 10 hours is a long time. So I like that game as we do this little Terran-focused analysis. So now we're going to do something a little bit unusual. We're going to watch through a game from just the Protoss' point of view and think about the sort of stuff that we're really worried about just from the Protoss point of view. This is another game that DDE ends up winning. And we're just going to zoom through it first from Protoss' point of view, because one of the funniest things is if you play just one race all the time, like let's say I'm just Terran, and I'm playing just Terran all the time, you end up viewing the map with Terran eyes, even when you rewatch replays like this, where everything is revealed. But however, if we look at Protoss, we're going to see that there's some key points in time where Protoss really ain't getting that much information. So I'm going to speed it up, so that way we can see things. Alright, cool. So we see this Protoss guy scouting things out. Let me kill the production tab really fast, so we can't, you know, just look at exactly what the Terran player's doing. We're going to start to see a lot of fears that can come up that are completely justified, like we get up into here and... Alright, sweet, we see our opponent. Did he actually have that second gas? Alright, I kind of assumed that he saw the second geyser, but I literally don't know if with this vision set that is considered a seen geyser. Huh. Yeah, I don't actually know. So I'm going to assume that he sees no gas. And he bounces right on out. At this point in time, from a Protoss' view, for any of you who've never played Protoss before, what you're thinking is, sweet, I don't have to build this first Zealot, because I'm not worried about any early pressure. I can actually go ahead and expand really fast, safely. Or I can tech really fast, safely. So we see the expand from White Rock. And then it looks like he's saving up, and he will be getting that Stalker up right away, and then immediately getting the Warp Gate up right away. Very typical opening. Now, I want you to note that at this point in time, I don't know if my opponent is necessarily early expanding. And it's pretty damn important that I actually go find that out really quickly. Because this is one of these 90% moments that... How do I want to say that? Yeah, this is one of these moments where 90% of the time, even 95% of the time, your opponent's early expanding. And if you think with that logic, if you just conclude definitively, my opponent's early expanding, you will win 95% of your games until you get to Grandmaster level or High Master level. And players who are assuming the early expand in this Protoss spot will get eaten alive. So when I see the Stalker moving forward, the fact that he's checking this, he's checking there, making sure the expand, doing some pokes up here, that's actually quite important. Because I'm still a little bit worried about my opponent maybe coming and doing some sort of big, scary, crazy push. Yep, and he pokes up there just to sort of see what's going on there. Seems like kind of a reasonable count. Oh, we have 4 barracks. Isn't that interesting? That's kind of something a little bit off the usual path. So as we come back here, how many Warp Gate units do we need to make? Well, you know what? From a Terran point of view, it's very easy to play tons of games as Terran and to be like, yeah, you know what, it's such a pain in the ass defending. It's such a huge, gigantic freaking pain in the ass holding the expansion. You gotta build all these bunkers, you gotta build all these Marines. But, you know, if you actually play from the Protoss point of view and you see that many Marines, your instinct is actually, holy fuck, I'm at 624. Oh my god, that's so many Marines. I mean, hell, my Warp Gate just finished. I have 2 Stalkers. I might die. He might actually be attacking me early. There's actually a lot more fear in the Protoss than you actually might think. So, see, pushes like this, you can see that they're actually quite a bit more frantic. Look at this. White Ra's not making probes. Actually, even if I rewind back to around 650, I believe he cuts probes for kind of a while. Yeah, see, look, here's the probe production. And then wraps up. We see the Stalkers now morphing in, trying to micro. Some times where probe production is end up getting halted. And, you know, White Ra probably now finally feels a little bit more confident. But look at his tech. Hasn't really done much. I mean, in the unit counting station, nothing has been made out of this robotics facility. I'm sure Warp Prism will be made at some point, but nothing that noteworthy has really happened. And here sometimes is the optical illusion that we can have as a Terran player, where we can say to ourselves, oh god, that push failed so miserably, and the units lost have lost more. And then you can just say something like, I bet my opponent already has Colossi coming, or is already getting the +1. They benchmark the standard game where nothing goes wrong and no one messes with anyone, and they compare that to the kind of crazy game where there's some more aggression and some more attacking. As it turns out, when you are aggressive and your opponent defends, most of the time, he's still underdeveloped. Most of the time. In fact, Stalkers are the biggest sign that your Protoss opponent cannot develop anything. If he's making Zealots and Sentries, then he has some free money to play with. But just Stalkers, as we can see, he's quite broke. And that's why, actually, I think that what White Ra's doing is quite smart. I just killed off a bunch of stuff. These Stalkers have hurt my ability to do that much for the time being, so let me be aggressive with them. God bless you, see a Warp Prism. You're so White Ra. Now, the one thing that kind of sucks is that White Ra's like the only Protoss player to really do this. To like regularly get Warp Prism, be like, oh cool, I held off an all-in. Let me build a freaking Warp Prism. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about that, because again, I'm trying to focus on this from the Terran point of view. I'm trying to focus on this from just that Terran point of view. But I want to note that with nutty aggression antics, this sort of push comes at a hugely scary point in time. What if you didn't get the Warp Prism, and you just went straight for the Colossus? You'd actually still have the Colossus coming at that time. So in fact, this sort of follow-up push from DDE is really, really strong, because he saw so many Stalkers in that initial push. He saw a frick ton of Stalkers. Notice how abruptly this push comes out, and why it's good. White Ra's moving out. We've seen Terran barely defend, and then suddenly, holy crap, back home. I have 3 sentries, my gateways are finishing, my Colossus halfway done. This actually feels really scary for a Protoss. And sure, we see this sort of drop miss, and that's, you know, it's cool, White Ra's, you know, fun, and then we get there, and there's like 5 barracks here. Oh my gosh, we're actually realizing that this is a lot scarier of a push than perhaps we initially thought. Look at that, just picking off the Colossus right away. You see how good that push timing is? You see why some of these early pushes can be like super ultra scary. And down goes the Warp Prism. And I'm actually kind of amazed that this game goes on any longer. Oh, no, look at that. White Ra held it all off. Now, in my eyes, what I think would be kind of a kick-ass thing to do would be to take another expansion. I have total map control. Actually, I would love to take that gold. That actually seems great. Oh, look at that. Look at that. That's exactly what we see DDE doing. But in Protoss' position, when you start to do some big hits to him early on, almost always when you do a big hit to someone, you'll see him scrambling to get up a wave of defense to deal with your second wave attack. From an attacker's point of view, psychologically you go, shit, I didn't win. Oh, God, oh, I bet he's going to have a whole bunch of stuff. But we've seen twice now, after 2 big attacks where White Ra barely defends, White Ra doesn't have that much stuff going on, and this Nexus actually even feels a little bit dangerous. Look at the way the mini-map looks, even. I mean, I'm belaboring the point slightly, but I mean, damn, look at how the minimap looks. No vision anywhere. Why don't I get an observer? So that way I can actually scout what my opponent is doing. Well, one of the benefits of being very, very aggressive is that you make your opponent feel like he can't get observers. Look at this. We're seeing DDE just hit all over the place. Just completely murdering him all over the place. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Terran decision-making. We actually end up looking at the Terran. From the Terran's point of view, but this sort of like grody constriction that we're feeling. Oh god, and the army is just like never ending, and it's so miserable, and oh, now we're getting dropped all over the place. See how effective this drop was? It was effective because White Raw in total defensive mode, keeping all his junk here, seeing a whole bunch of units stream in here. This isn't just a drop that White Raw could have just thought about a little bit in advance, defended against, and would have been fine. This is just aggression plus follow-up aggression plus follow-up aggression that not only is really, really fun to watch, it's really fun to play as. Because, I mean, does DDE look freaking indestructible or what, man? That's, like, pretty cool. So, the rest of the game is White Raw just trying to scramble to hold on to it, to himself. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a brief break, so that way when we come back, we can rewatch the same starting portion of this game and talk about how different that view looks for DDE and why it's impressive that he was making those good decisions early on. So, I'm taking a break. There we go. I'm taking a break. Ah, it's delicious water. All right, sweet. Here we go.